It was supposed to be a normal hike, one of those spontaneous, last-minute decisions that happen when you're with a group of friends with nothing better to do. Late October had arrived, bringing with it a crisp bite in the air and the vibrant yellows and reds of autumn leaves. The woods felt peaceful, almost dreamlike, and we had no idea how quickly that would change. It was me, Trevor, Mia, and Jason, just wandering around the outskirts of the forest, when Trevor spotted something we hadn't noticed before, an overgrown trail that branched off the main path. The others were hesitant, but Trevor, always the bold one, convinced us it'd be fun to explore. After all, we'd hiked these woods for years and never seen it before. Curiosity got the better of us. The deeper we went, the stranger things seemed. The trees, tall and gnarled, seemed to grow closer together, blocking out the afternoon sun. The air became heavier, cooler, like the atmosphere itself was pressing down on us. But there was something else, something about the silence. No wind rustling the leaves, no birds, no sound except the crunch of dead branches beneath our feet. We kept walking, our nervous laughter fading into uneasy silence until we came to a clearing. There, at the edge of the woods, stood a cabin. It looked ancient, its wood dark with age, the roof sagging slightly. Ivy and moss clung to its sides, swallowing it back into the earth. Something about it felt off, like it didn't belong, or it had been waiting. "I bet it's abandoned," Trevor said, stepping forward. "Let's check it out." We should have stopped him. I should have stopped him. Trevor started toward the cabin, but just as he reached the edge of the clearing, something changed. I can't explain it, but one moment he was there, and the next he wasn't. He disappeared into the trees without a sound, swallowed by the dark spaces between the trunks. We called his name again and again, but there was no response. Panic set in quickly. We fanned out, searching the area, shouting for Trevor, but it was like he'd vanished into thin air. We retraced our steps, or tried to, but the trail we'd come from, the one we were so sure of, was gone. It was like it had never existed. The trees pressed in on us from all sides, the world twisting and folding in on itself. Hours passed, maybe more. Darkness began to fall, and the cold deepened. Mia was crying. Jason was cursing under his breath, but there was nothing we could do. We stumbled back to the main trail, hoping Trevor had made it back on his own, but he hadn't. The search party combed the woods for days, but they never found him. No one could explain how a person could just disappear like that. They chalked it up to some kind of accident, maybe an animal attack, but I know what I saw, or what I didn't see. Now, every October, I think about Trevor and that trail that should have never been there. I've been back to the woods since, but I can't find the clearing, and I can't find the cabin. But sometimes, I hear my name being called from deep in the trees, in a voice that almost sounds like his. It was supposed to be a simple, fun afternoon. The crisp autumn air, the smell of hay and warm cider, and the rows upon rows of pumpkins stretched out before us, glowing orange under the fading sunlight. My wife, Emily, and our two kids, Sophie and Max, darted between the vines, laughing as they searched for the perfect pumpkins to carve. I smiled, soaking it all in. One of those rare, peaceful moments. But then I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the trees at the edge of the field. A dark figure standing motionless, half hidden between the trunks. Something about the way it lingered unnerved me. I stopped walking, squinting to make out its shape. "Hey, Em," I called, pointing toward the trees. "Do you see that?" She glanced up from where she was kneeling beside Max, inspecting a pumpkin. See what? I frowned and pointed again. Over there, by the trees. There's someone standing there. Emily straightened up, shielding her eyes from the low sun. I don't see anything, she said, her voice casual, but there was a hint of concern in her eyes. Maybe you're seeing shadows. Maybe, I muttered, but my skin prickled with unease. The figure hadn't moved, and the more I stared, the less natural it seemed, too still, too dark. I shook it off and turned back to my family, forcing myself to enjoy the moment. But as we wandered through the field, picking pumpkins and taking photos, I kept catching glimpses of that figure. Each time, it was closer, a few rows away. Then only a dozen feet beyond us, lurking behind the taller pumpkins. Every time I looked directly at it, the figure was gone. It only appeared at the edges of my vision, slipping between reality and something darker. By the time the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the field, I was on edge. The laughter of the kids felt distant, swallowed by the growing silence around us. I wanted to leave. We should head back, I said, my voice tight. It's getting late. Emily looked at me, a question in her eyes, but she didn't argue. We gathered the pumpkins, the kids grumbling about wanting to stay longer, and started making our way toward the parking lot. That's when I heard it. A loud crack, like something heavy had stepped down. I whipped around. A pumpkin, not 5 feet from me, lay in pieces on the ground, shattered like it had been crushed underfoot. But no one was there. No one except the figure. This time, it stood directly in front of me. I could see it clearly now, an impossibly tall, gaunt thing cloaked in shadow, its face hidden in darkness. My heart pounded in my chest. It didn't move, but I could feel its eyes on me, cold and hungry. I stumbled backward, barely able to breathe. Emily's voice was distant, calling my name, but I couldn't look away from the figure. It took a slow, deliberate step toward me, the ground cracking beneath it. "Run," I whispered, then louder, "Run!" We bolted, the kids' cries filling the air as we raced back to the car. But even as we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still out there, watching, waiting. And I knew this wasn't over. The night was crisp, the air biting as my friends and I arrived at the corn maze. It was tradition. Every year, we drove out to the countryside for a scare. This year, the maze was bigger, more elaborate, and they said it had an extra challenge. Only the bravest could finish it. We laughed at the warning, feeling invincible. The moon hung heavy overhead, casting an eerie glow over the towering stalks of corn. As we entered, the rustling of the leaves and the occasional distant scream from other groups set the mood. It was all part of the fun. "Let's split up," Ryan suggested. "Make it more interesting." I hesitated, but everyone else agreed, scattering into the maze without a second thought. I stood there for a moment, the tall corn swaying in the wind, then decided to head left. The maze was complicated, with endless turns and dead ends. I wandered deeper, alone, the only sound the crunch of dry leaves beneath my feet. At first, it was peaceful, almost too peaceful. But soon, I became aware of something else, a faint sound just behind me. It was subtle, like someone's breath, soft, deliberate. I stopped, turning around quickly. There was no one there. I laughed it off. Of course, it had to be Ryan or one of the others trying to mess with me. They'd done stuff like this before, lurking in the dark, waiting to scare me at just the right moment. "Nice try," I called out, hoping they'd reveal themselves. Silence. I shook my head and kept walking, but the feeling didn't go away. A few minutes later, the breathing started again, this time louder, closer. My heart quickened. I spun around, but once again, the path was empty. The corn loomed high around me, forming a wall that made it impossible to see far ahead or behind. This was different. It felt different. My chest tightened as I realized something wasn't right. I tried to shake it off. It had to be a trick, part of the experience, maybe even an actor from the maze. But as I took another step, the breathing returned, this time right by my ear. Shallow, raspy, it sent chills down my spine. I whipped around so fast I almost lost my balance. Nothing, no one. But the breathing hadn't stopped. It was still there, louder, as if something was standing inches away. Panic surged through me. I broke into a run, twisting and turning through the narrow paths, desperately searching for a way out. But the breathing followed, relentless, never faltering. I shouted for my friends, but my voice was swallowed by the maze. I tripped, falling hard onto the dirt. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, slowly, the breathing returned, louder now, heavy, labored. I could feel it, as though someone or something was standing right over me. I couldn't see it, but I could feel its presence, cold and suffocating. I scrambled to my feet, not daring to look behind me again. My legs shook as I ran, blindly now, deeper into the maze, my mind racing. No matter how fast I went, the breathing never left, closing in, surrounding me. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and check out my other content on the screen now.